anybody not tripped over the cable? Because we got a few more panelists, we can just knock it off.
Yes, but I was actually slipped past me. I was like, I went the other way around. Because they'd taken the bag away, and that I went to where they I didn't know you.
All right, so let's get started. The purpose of this panel is to ask questions of people who have successfully, or to some degree, quit their job to do their thing. So let's go down the table and say who we are, what we used to do, and what we do now. And then we're going to open it immediately up to questions. Start on this end.
My name is Nicole.
We have microphones.
Oh.
Hi.
My name is Nicole. My band is Hello the Future. I'm the only person in my band. Prior to being and concurrent with being Hello the Future, I was also a project manager / executive assistant at a think tank in DC. Currently, I am Hello the Future. I also do project management consulting, and I also do incredibly shitty content writing for the internet.
You can applaud. Oh. Wires are an issue.
Yes, I'm noticing this. Hello, I'm Tony Shadwick. You may know me from the internet Reddit as Numsky. I was and still am a computer person, network engineer, Perl programmer, Linux administrator, all that jazz. Back in 2005, I quit my day job and started my own company, OSS Solutions, to do open source software for small, mid-sized companies. That company doesn't exist anymore. So I'm here to be the negative Debbie this morning. Sorry.
We're doing a couple of different levels of quit to try and give you perspective, so you can sort of address your questions. We've got full bore quitters doing our own thing and still trying to do it. We've got people that have gone that way and come back, and we've got people that are halfway through the process. So I think we should have some interesting information. My name's Joel Watson. I make an online comic called Hijinks Ensue. I did sales and marketing and other horrible things for about a decade. The last thing I did before I did this was I sold websites to dentists, which is the dumbest job. It's just unnecessary. The world keeps spinning if no dentist has a website. So, next.
Hi, I'm Christopher Bedell. I am the co-owner of Greater Than Games, a card and board game, a tabletop game company, and the co-designer of Sentinels of the Multiverse, a cooperative superhero themed card game. Before I did all that, I worked a dozen different jobs, and most recently I taught kids because kids are awesome.
Well, they can be if you teach them. They start out not so great.
I teach high school kids, and
That's the worst.
They're the best.
Oh.
They're the best. I'm a full board quitter.
We'll have a different panel later about how horrible teens are.
Sorry, David.
Hi, I'm Alex Bradley. I used to be a graphic designer, multimedia designer for a government consulting firm in DC, because in DC, if you're working for the government. And recently quit all that to move to Hollywood, basically, and do something more interesting with my drawing and animating skills, like, say, make animated movies and cartoons. So, since about September of last year, I've been publishing a webcomic called Miskatonic U, Lovecraftian themed university adventures, and I've also been taking classes in motion graphics and animation to get into the visual effects industry, or possibly also like 3D animation or the animation industry.
That's good.
Yeah, before passing it on to Kristen, I'd like to toss it back to my wife, Renee, at the end, who came with me.
Hi. Hi. I'm mostly with him, but I also quit. Well, I was working part-time actually, as a writer, editor, and mostly wanted to support him partially because I don't know as much what I want to do. I've never known for 40 years what I've always gone back and forth about what I wanted to do, partially because of a lack of self-confidence, god damn it. So,
awesome,
fix
Renee.
that now, right? If that's an issue for you, fix it now.
I think the spouse or significant other or even roommate of anyone who is pursuing a dream has a harder job than the person pursuing the dream. swear, Betty, just one more month, we're gonna make it.
Somewhere out there, Karen Chadwick is weeping.
I don't just want to be.
And I'm not to diminish your efforts. I'm just saying it's a noble thing to follow someone into the abyss.
Yeah. So I'm also taking classes in journalism, and I'm aiming for entertainment journalism. So.
Back on this end.
Thank you, Alex.
Hello. Kristen Mooney. I did 10 years, 10-year career with NASA, Goddard Space Center, designing high-speed computer chips right out of college. And then actually did another 3 years with a startup. A bunch of people from NASA came and started another company in the aerospace industry. I ran the IT department, managed that department there, before quitting 13 years ago. 13 years? I think 13 years ago. To start Lee Labs with my husband, Andy. And it worked.
And what do you guys make?
Games. We make a game called Flux.
There you go.
Thank you very much. I'm Andy Looney. I invented Flux, and I quit my job in 1998, and I never looked back.
Awesome. So let's. Who's got a question? Come on, guys. We got 50 minutes. I assume some of you are wanting to do something like this. Are you trying to? Is anyone trying to quit? Wanting to quit? Anyone?
Here we go.
All right. Every one of you has a question.
I did kind of quit. I worked in Washington, D.C. doing consulting work for the government. Yay. And I actually worked part-time at a used bookstore, and when the owner wanted to retire, I bought the bookstore from him.
Cool.
So, yeah, I've done that for 2 years, and for me, my spouse was very hesitant for this. It scared the crap out of him. So I ended up working full-time for 2 months at another job as I owned the bookstore, and then continued part-time for 6 months after that before I quit my other job entirely, just to the bookstore. And in my experience, that was a horrible idea. It was incredibly difficult to do both of those, and I should have, in retrospect, just quit, just done the bookstore once I was an owner. So how did you all, the ones who did this, move into doing your dream job instead of doing your day-to-day job? How did that work for you?
I started the comic about a year before I, depending on who you ask, quit or was asked to quit. The second answer is more true. I had been doing the comic for about a year. When my wife got pregnant, I kind of realized, like mortality hits you in the face when you realize you're gonna have a kid, and there's a limited amount of time, and there's a limited amount of effort, and the more effort you spend on things you hate, or things that, even if they're just baseline but don't make you happy, it's just all wasted time. So just, chase happiness was the main thing that was like just ringing through my ears, and I realized if my kid had been old enough to ask me what I was doing for 12 hours a day, I would have been pretty depressed about the answer. I wanted her to be proud of what I was doing with my time. And so I started the comic with the hopes of someday turning it into a job. And then as the comic took over more of my mental cycles, my job, there was nowhere for it to fit. I didn't care anymore about dental websites. I just didn't. I would go to a 2-hour lunch just to reply to comments and Twitter and stuff. And come in later and later because I've been working on the comic in the morning before work, and go home earlier so I could work on the comic. And finally they were like, hey, you just hate it here, you should go. And I'm like, you're right. We're on the same page here. And I left, and it was one of those things of, okay, this is either going to be the time I remember for the rest of my life that I took this leap and never looked back, or the time where I treaded water on unemployment for a few months and then got another job I don't like. And so with the support of my wife, we made it a thing. We made it happen. It was incredibly difficult. We lived off our savings for almost a year, dried those up, and never replenished them because, hey, money on the internet is a thing that's not much. And so, but it's been 5 years that I've been doing this full time, and I'm here. I mean, this is part of it. So every month, every year is a different kind of struggle. But it was primarily the thing that kept me from going to Starbucks or kept me from going for some sort of part-time job was like what you said. The only way I could do this was all in. And so it didn't matter where I was for another 6 or 8 hours a day. That was going to be a distraction that was going to extend the process of doing this full time by years, if not indefinitely. So I had to jump in both feet and make sure that I wasn't distracted.
I would say it's amazing how quickly you can just get like completely entwined in your life. And we've sort of somewhat maybe sound like we're bashing these consulting jobs in DC, but actually it was a great job. They took really good care of me. I did have some creative outlet in there, which is the most seductive thing. And it's really almost harder than having a sucky job you want to quit. No, it's not almost harder. It's definitely harder to quit a job that's actually like paying the bills, doing really well. The people there are great. There's really no good reasons to leave except insurance. Okay.
All the freelancers up here go insurance.
Okay, let's not talk about that. We don't want to bring the room down.
I've got extra sucky that it was easier to quit.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, my job did start to go downhill a little bit, but that just gave me time to work on my stuff in my spare time at work.
Don't tell them.
Don't tell the government.
No one here's ever done work.
The other.
Yeah.
Absolutely not, no.
But no, I think the hardest thing about, well, the second hardest thing. First hardest thing was leaving our friends behind because we moved across the country to do what we wanted to do. But the second hardest thing was quitting a job that was really a very, very good job.
And you have that fear that you might not ever be able to get that back too.
Yeah.
Like that. Oh God, what have I done?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the creative. I feel like the creative side has never been as fed as it has been in the last year. I don't have the new job yet, but every decision we've made is sort of I feel like we're on a line towards our dreams, and like I've been off the road for too long, and now I'm back on it, and things are starting to smooth out. I know I've also been on the failure road, so I don't want to say it's easy because I've quit a job to work with a startup that failed. I tried freelancing on my own for a while, where I was doing freelance illustration. Burned out my savings in like 6 months, and like out of desperation had to find a job quick. So it does take some forethought, it does take some planning, but if you do it, sometimes even then you still have to do it.
Can I jump in? I have a bit of a different story. I am very, 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 very organized. And when I started doing Hello the Future 3 years ago, I decided as soon as I went to my first MagFest and realized I could sell things and how much I was able to sell that weekend, I started keeping a chart. How many shows I was doing, how much money I was making, how many followers I had, etc., etc., etc. And I had a line. And it was like, when it crosses this line and it stays over this line for 3 months, then I quit. And so it's a bit of a different perspective in that I was already from the very beginning of my creative process thinking of Hello the Future as a business.
Yeah. Now we have a bunch of people lined up, so if you don't mind, let's move on to the next question. Thank you so much.
Hello. So I'm in a situation where I've done a lot of math. I figured out that in X amount of time, if Y things happen, I can quit and have Z amount of time to become successful. However, also at the same time, for a very long and present story, I have a pair of aging parents whose option for living at this point is to spend all of their money on long-term care until they are destitute and can become eligible for Medicaid. So I'm in this sort of moral quandary. I have money that I could use to try to get myself off, and potentially lose all of. Or I can continue to squander that with the knowledge that I'm eventually going to have to help my aging parents with a terrible situation. Are there any of you on the panel who have had this kind of sort of moral and ethical dilemma of what is the best way for you to see to your own personal needs and the needs of your family or your parents or some other person for whom you may be accountable?
Yeah, that's really tough.
That's a nasty situation. Unfortunately, I've got a similar story. God help me. So, as my wife would point out to you, my father and I are almost the same person, just split out in age a bit. My sister, who is a year and a half younger than me, took a much different path in life. I have no children, I'm 35. My sister had her first child at 18 and rapidly had 2 more. Let's just say there's trailer parks involved. I'll leave it at that.
She owns a bunch of trailer parks?
Yeah.
Great. What's this?
Yeah, that's nice.
But there was an unfortunate situation where my nephew was sexually abused at one point. And
Hey, there goes the panel.
yeah, I know. It's,
Yeah, I knew I was going to bring everything down. If I
yeah,
could
well,
ask the actual
it's
question
important that I
have.
get to the point of this, and I'll try to make it quick. He also has autism, and apparently, you know, what was done to him he thought was normal, so he started trying to repeat the behavior. As a result, there were some situations that played out. State took custody of my nephew away from my father, or from my sister, excuse me. My father and I both initially jumped to the same reaction. They were going to put him into a mental institution for sex offenders, which my nephew is not. He just needed help. He needed counseling. So my father beat me to the punch, much to my wife's joy, I suppose. The problem is, whatever would have played out from here was going to be bad, because my sister is not the most responsible of people. What followed was 5 years of my father being unable to work to raise my nephew. And the moral of this winds up being, there comes a point where it's not entirely heartless to think of yourself before your family members. And I'm not saying this to give my sister a free pass. This was a terrible choice. But in hindsight, neither my father or I should have jumped to the rescue there, because it was empowering my sister not to take responsibility for the situation.
There's a valid point there. There's a time when you, it sucks to even say it out loud, but you have to maybe be a little bit selfish to take a risk. Because risk is always can be construed as a negative thing. Risk implies that there is a potential very bad outcome. And a lot of times the potential outcome could be we lose our car, we lose our house, we end up in a worse situation. And the potential bonus, you just have to decide, is it not even more likely, just is the payoff worth it? And I mean, for me especially, it was, we had an infant child who I was potentially thrusting into economic depression by leaving a well-paying job for a non-paying job. And, you know, to this day though, I mean, so far she's almost 6 years old and she does not know of a time when both of her parents weren't happy and self-sufficient and not working horrible 9-to-5 jobs. I mean, we did for the first year of her life, but she doesn't remember that part. All she knows is that we're all home together and we're all happy and we all, you know, I make stuff that I like, and if you ask her what I do for a living, she's like, you draw pictures and then your friends buy them on the internet. And I'm like, why not? That sounds great. It's close enough, you know? But I was terrified that I wouldn't be able to give her, can I give her the money she needs, or can I give her the role model that she needs, you know? And for me personally, the decision became, the miserable husk of a human being that is your father is going to be able to give you all kinds of money. And that sentence alone was like, yep, this is the wrong way to go. I've got to do the other thing.
And the point, just so I can finish the point, you weren't cutting me off, by the way. There's a warning they give you every time you get on an airplane, which is, you know, when the oxygen masks drop, put the mask on yourself first before you help your children or aged parents or whatever. When it comes down to it, your first responsibility has to be to yourself, and unfortunately it took me getting on medication and going to counseling before I finally owned up to that. You, as Joel was pointing out, you can be a miserable husk of a human being and do right by others, but at the end of this journey, we only get to go down this line of life once, and you have to look back. Are you going to look back on that and say, well, I did right by everyone else? And
it can be noble, but it's also not. It's not the only way.
Yeah.
It sounds so selfish and dickish to say it that way, but
That's why I said
True.
took drugs and counseling
Yeah.
to get me to that point.
Let me cut in a second and actually talk specifically about your question. You're saying, you have this scenario where you can either make money and take care of them, or you can use the money that you have and do something with yourself. And what I will tell you is that every person who has ever quit, I like to think of it more as starting than quitting, but either way, quitting is about sacrifice. It's not about high risk, high reward. It's about high risk, hopefully.
This is a game designer talking. High risk, high luck, low, yeah.
Right, no, it's absolutely what you're doing, or the process of quitting a job, especially if you have a stable day job, walking away from that to do something else in whatever order of operations, whether you start doing something else and slowly transition or whatever. Everyone's got their own life story. Everyone has their own path. But the process of doing that is a process of taking probably should be a calculated risk, but a giant risk nonetheless. And that leap is the only way to find out if it's going to be successful. It could fail, it could succeed, but if you don't make the leap, it won't happen at all. That said, you have to be prepared to deal with the consequence of failure. And in your situation, were I you, I don't know that I would be. I'm not saying you should do it, I'm not saying you shouldn't do this, or you should do this. I'm saying you have to look at it and say, I know what the consequences of success are, and I know what the consequences of failure are. And armed with that knowledge, I will proceed thusly. And it's all about having a business plan, really, is what it comes in.
Yeah, I was wondering if anybody else was...
Jump in real quick, and we'll go to the next question after this.
Well, I'd just like to jump in for a bit. I would say that the whole point here is that we're talking about quitting your job. And the job of taking care of your parents is the one you're talking about quitting here. And when you quit your job, you have to have faith that it's going to work. When we quit our job, we refer to it as the jump off the cliff. And what we did, when we took our 2 engineers' salaries and all the money we could borrow, and we quit our jobs, and our hope was that we would jump off the cliff and that we would fly before we hit the ground.
Yeah, we took out a bunch of platinum cards from those engineering salaries that we had.
And obviously it worked for us, but the whole point here is to say, if you believe it's going to work, you can't worry about the negatives too much. I mean, obviously you have to have a plan, and I don't know what your relationship would be like to your parents. Some people's parents, they'll do anything for, others they're more estranged, and I don't know what your situation is. But if you take the money and spend it, you won't have it, and your parents and your situation, you'll have to deal with it some other way, and that's just the way it goes. But if it works, you will be able to take care of your parents anyway, because you will fly.
Just to pick up the mood just a little, this is no way a comparison by any stretch, but Alex's mom, when we told them that we were moving, she actually said the words, "Are we really such bad parents that you have to move across the country to get away from it?"
That's good. All right, let's do the next question.
His mom and not my dad.
If we're going to get to even half the people that are standing up for the next 30 minutes, well, let's do everything a bit zippier now.
So, since this is a panel of an audience where they're...
Get up on the mic.
Right. Since this, the audience is thinking about quitting, what one thing would you guys, if you could go back, not do?
Nearly all of it. That's a trick question, because you have to do it all wrong so that you can say, don't do that again.
Not a damn thing. I would do exactly everything the same way I did, even all the failures, because what I learned out of those,
yeah,
exactly.
It's more like, I would say, don't wait so long was my big one, because I'd be, if I'd started 3 years sooner, I'd be 3 years further along than I am now. But
you would have missed out on those life experiences.
That's true. I mean, it's like, I wouldn't say one thing I wouldn't do as much as I'd say the thing that was almost the most important that I did was to have savings, which translate that to have a safety net. I do not think this is possible with no safety net. If you have a month worth of money and a month worth of stability and you jump off that cliff, expect to be looking for a job in about 30 days. I think my small business was completely unprofitable for at least 6 months, and then 20 bucks here and 100 bucks there and 500 bucks another month. It was over a year before the money was even close to enough to live on. and probably another good year before I really felt like I was on my feet again. So they say if you're going to start a business, have 2 years of living income saved. I only had 1. 2 would have been great.
Yeah. No. To jump back in again. For those of you that are familiar with my company, you know that we sold a lot of units in the year and a half that we've been around. We were established January of 2011. January of 2013, last month, was the first month I pulled a paycheck. Yes! But the point is, in those 2 years, first all the savings went away, then the few stock options I had went away, and then all the credit cards started blinking red. And now, the credit cards are still blinking red, but they're not blinking much anymore. And I'm recovering. Yeah, we're starting to move back, but you have to be willing to take everything you have. You're like, stability in the fire. Okay.
Threw it on the ground.
Yeah.
I think it was about 7 years before all our credit cards got paid off.
And mine aren't. So that gives you,
And we're still borrowing money.
Yeah. So
a big part of my job is travel, and I think I paid for an entire year of travel on credit. And it's not to say that I'm in outrageous debt, but more than I'd like, and that's just part of the gig.
But that debt is a big part of it. Like we still have a lot of startup debt that we're working on paying down. And as you grow, you find you still need yet more money to do more things.
Right.
And
but the question is, do you want to be a person that has a lot of credit card debt, a lot of startup debt and all that stuff, but a job that is your job, doing playing with your baby, having your thing, you're working 90 hours a week, you're getting paid pennies, but it's yours.
Yes. And when you die happy, all the credit card stuff isn't a problem anymore.
Original question, what wouldn't you do? Those of you that are looking into doing service-based stuff like what I was doing, I would say don't fall for the lure of the one big client to bail out on all your others. Sometime when we're not on the panel, so I don't eat up all of our time, come ask me about a website called stinkyfishpoker.com.
First of all, that sounds amazing.
It's an online poker website that lured me with checks of $20,000 every 2 weeks. And I bailed on all of my customers to service this one. And then there was this law that got passed back around 2005, 2006. You might recall Will Wheaton talking about it. The investors bailed all of a sudden, and I was left with a data center, an office, data connection that was costing us more than our mortgage and all of our other bills combined, and it was going on credit card. And my wife tells me a story of having to go back to the credit union to put cash back into our accounts because she had written a check that wasn't going to clear without putting that money back in. And we're talking like $5 here. So yeah, even
I think that factors into stability. Like the safety net, like have a little safety, and if that means other clients or lower risk clients. Or
I mean, keep diversified. I mean, this plays into everything. Yes.
Have a business plan.
And don't abandon it, no matter what you think the siren song is singing. So anyway,
next.
This is a practical question. I'm pretty sure Nicole has an answer for this. But insurance, we talked about this when we were learning, insurance. But it isn't something that has to be addressed. I know there are insurance options for individuals, but they are, expensive, awful, terrible, so I'm wondering.
Yes.
Like I said, I know Nicole has an answer for this.
The answer is be Canadian.
My wife has a full-time job.
I was expecting my wife as a full-time Canadian, and I was like...
But it'd be nice to know what the insurance options are for individual people who are trying to...
Don't get older than 40.
Yeah.
Colleen, my answer for you is to move back to Los Angeles. There are, not surprisingly, a large number of insurance opportunities for people with non-traditional jobs. Probably California as a whole, I didn't look that one up, but certainly in Los Angeles, which I did not find when I was doing my spreadsheets for DC. So as they say, your mileage may vary, but the options are out there. Also, whatever you're doing, if you get a health insurance, make sure you don't get terrible health insurance, because I also had terrible health insurance for a couple of months that was coming in at like $75 a month that I had to pay them, but then when I went to the walk-in clinic, it ended up costing me almost $1,000. It was ridiculous. So what I mean to say is this: read the fine print, and there are options. I would have to look at your individual city and run a comparison. You can hire me to do that if you want.
We spent about 2 or 3 years trying to figure this out, especially with a child. We got her insurance immediately, and we still had insurance for a year while I was still working. But it was important for us that she be taken care of, so we got her. It turns out for a brand new, perfect little human, insurance isn't that bad. We pay about $100 a month for medium to crappy insurance for her. One emergency room visit, the bill came back at $8,000, and we owed $3,500 of it still. So that's kind of how it goes. For people, for adults, for humans, it turns out currently in America, and this all changes a bit in 2014, but currently, for two married people in relatively good health in their 30s, we could be paying, if we wanted to, about $450, $500 a month for really, really not great insurance. And the kind of thing where you factor that out over the year, about $6,000. Okay, we haven't had insurance for 5 years. We end up with a few $1,000s of medical expenses a year, less than we'd be paying for insurance. Here's where it gets tricky. Something terrible happens, car crash, we've got nothing. And you can actually get catastrophic insurance only if you're scared about that. Something that is like, I just got my head chopped off by a helicopter, they can stitch it back on, and it's not as much as regular insurance.
It comes down to, are you looking for health insurance or are you looking for a health care plan?
And all the options in America are pretty terrible right now. So
that's what it comes down to.
Not to be too political, just don't get sick. Republican health care.
Yeah.
Don't get sick.
That's what I'm on.
Next.
Hi, I'm making a video game, and one of my biggest inspirations was the guy who made Kingdom of Loathing 10 years ago, and it's still going. And I just want to know some of your inspiration stories. You look at that and see, they did that, I can totally go for that too, because you're definitely not the first group of people to quit their job.
Let's do this one. Cool. Yeah. Let's do this one down the table and just do real quick, like whose story you saw or read or heard, or whose example you followed and went, that's what I can do.
Oh, big surprise, Jonathan Colton, really, and that's a lot of what my writing is starting to be on. What I'm really, like, the first story I hope to publish is about Jonathan through us, and the more I show it to people, the more they say, make it more about me, make it more my story, because this first cruise really was such a turning point for us, because we met you guys, we knew about Jonathan's story, and it was so inspirational, blah, blah, blah. But we met people here who are in LA, and who said, this is what we do, we are contacts for you, and we think what Alex does is amazing, the videos that he's done, and it is possible for you, so do it. And so we started, and it was something we were kind of thinking about, but that sort of pushed us to actually do it.
I did a song a week for 100 consecutive weeks, so my influence...
Take that, Jonathan Colton! I doubled up!
In my very first video, I was such a presumptuous little git that I actually said, if you want to make a machinima video of this song, you can.
Wow.
Did anyone?
No, it was terrible! Okay. It was the first week.
Was it as bad as Mr. Suckfish?
Shut up about Mr. Suckfish. You're gonna fight.
Personally, I thought that was an ingenious bit of writing, but I'm 11, and what is this? So, actually, it was my prior 2 employers before I quit that were my inspiration, because they were doing such a terrible job. I'm like, these guys can do it, really. I can do this. Turns out I could. So, yay.
That's actually a pretty good point. I had worked almost exclusively for small businesses almost my whole professional career before doing this, and I watched a bunch of idiots run their businesses into the ground. And without realizing that the creative was part of it, the business was almost more of it, I wouldn't give up that education for anything, because it was like, you know, don't get some money and spend all of it immediately on a car or whatever. Like that kind of stuff that I was watching these guys do. They would sign a few new clients and they'd be like, all right, suits and BMWs all around, you know, and then we're struggling a month after that. So learn from the dummies. For me, cliche, but yeah, the first time I realized you can do your thing, it's at least possible on this planet in this decade. Was reading about Jonathan. It was the story in, I think it was in NY Mag online, was the first big published thing about Thing a Week. And then kind of also at the time reading Will's blog about, you know, I think I used to be an actor and maybe now I'm a writer and maybe I'm a blogger, I'm not sure. And then he wasn't asking those questions, he was living them on his blog. And it was like, I'm watching this guy figure out his career in real time, and it turns out his career is being himself and turning that into a job. And those two stories, and then you know, I do an online comic. Online comics were sort of becoming a job for some people around 2005, more than a dozen. And I was like, holy crap, you know, first of all, this comic sucks. And I know this guy's making a living, so if he can do it, I can do it. Or these comics are great, and I can see, okay, they've got ads, they've got t-shirts, eventually they've got a book. This is a bit of a roadmap that I can follow.
I wasn't really specifically inspired by anyone to quit and do this full time. I was inspired by, I saw other games being published and I didn't like them. And I was like, I never set out to make a company, I set out to make a game. And then people liked that game, so I started selling that game. And then people liked that game, so I built that further out and out and out. And there was never a point where I sat and said, yes, here's my 10-year plan. I had a 1-year plan, and then that just kind of tessellated out very nicely.
So spite can be a motivator.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, if these idiots can do it, surely I can. And it was mostly stubbornness. I refuse to do poorly, so if that means that I just don't sleep for a week, then that is what I do. It's not a good plan.
I could probably bring it down to a talk with George, and the one line, you know, if there's someone inside yourself who wants to be set free, you know, shame on you if you don't do it. That speaks to me more than anything else that Jonathan's done, but he has lived that, and it's such an inspiration that it was probably the turning point. I've been stewing with myself for a long time. You know, I just need more time to work on this fun project on the side. Need to steal some more time from work so I can, you know, get this video done or whatever. And finally, it was just not worth it to. It just wasn't worth it to keep the steady job when I really needed the time for myself more. You got your own mic.
We'd been making games together for maybe 7 or 8 years before we jumped off the cliff and tried to make it as what we did for a living. So I don't know that I have real quitting inspirations, although there was plenty of inspirations for what our company became. One of them, Cosmic Whip Out. Did you want to talk about that?
You can talk about it.
I'll let Andy talk about it.
Anybody hear of Cosmic Whip Out? Little dice company, dice game made by a small company in Massachusetts. We both discovered them like when we were in high school and thought, how cool is this little company making these little dice games, sending newsletters out? We could do that.
Yeah, they had this great little mailing list that we would get in the mail.
Pre-internet, of course.
When was that?
80s, early 80s.
Well, I first played Cosmic Whip Out in 1981.
Because it's weird how I think from that part of the table down, we're talking about how we've used the internet to make our thing a thing.
Then we were pre-internet.
We were on the internet in the very, very early days. I was one of the very first people to take credit cards on the internet and sell stuff. Before any kind of merchant account understood what the internet was. That first merchant account that I got, that I negotiated, person after person after person, nobody knew what the internet was. And I finally got an account as if I was taking phone orders because I knew the credit card number but didn't have it in my hand. And the only thing they could imagine or understand that was as if I was taking a phone order.
Anyway, some other influences. There's a small company in Maryland called Kadon Enterprises. They do really deluxe original games, direct to consumer, and they were also inspirational to us. A couple other, like they were saying, working for Chuckleheads. After I quit my job with NASA, I went to work for a company called Magnet Interactive Studios, which was also a major turning point in my life because that turned me from a programmer into a game designer also. But, God, it was such idiots running that company. And same with Telesys, not that there was idiots running it, but just that we were looking at it going, oh, you know, that's not how we would do it. And my last little inspiration is a comic book by an artist named James JoCo, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, who did a daily comic strip called American Elf. And speaking of quitting, he just quit that. After 14 years of doing this daily strip, he's left a huge hole in all of his readers' lives where he's quit his job from that. But before that, he wrote a little comic book called Quit Your Job. I wish I'd brought it. That book was one of the inspiring points for me. It was a little comic book about how great it is to quit your job. I wrote one panel, a guy after quitting, he's like out in the snow and holding up his arms going, I love to quit!
All right, next.
I think Joel touched on this a little bit already, but how do you stave off the temptation to, say, get a part-time job, especially if you don't have as much of a safety net as you would like to have had? Like for example, myself, I didn't quit per se. I was let go at the end, or at the beginning of last year.
Tell yourself whatever you want to tell yourself.
Can't fire me, I quit.
And we already had some creative irons in the fire, so I was trying to explore those for the past year. Every once in a while, it's like,
yeah, let's go with our new quitters and mid quitters here for this answer.
All right. So the deal is, if you're thinking about this in terms of running a business, you need money coming in, and the money can come in a number of different ways. Think of yourself as the owner of the business, and you have a number of clients. Some of my clients pay me to sell them music and t-shirts. Some of my clients pay me to tell them why the click path on their website is not working so well. Some of my clients, and I really feel bad about saying shitty content writing because I was trying to make a joke and it was not so good. Some of my clients pay me to write articles about how to braid hair, which I actually really love doing. So what I mean to say is, as long as you know what you are, know who you are, at heart, I am Hello the Future. I have no problem writing articles about braiding hair to help that. And I don't think of it as a part-time job. I think of it as bringing money into my business.
Yeah. Just because we quit full-time jobs doesn't mean that they're bad. You know, part of what I'm doing is training myself to get another full-time job, but doing more directly what I want to do. But yeah, just because we quit a job doesn't mean they're evil. A part-time job is still worthwhile. And I totally agree with Nicole that it's
and in your case too,
stream comes in.
If you're looking for animation work, your path might be quit the job you hate, figure out how to do what you love, and then get hired by an animation studio. You know, matter of fact, I should talk after this. Just so happen to have some friends that are about to make a cartoon. So that worked best.
A valid point that, granted, he said earlier to me, quitters, I have had to go back into the enterprise world. Some of the skills that I picked up doing my thing, there is no logical path I could have taken in the professional world to get those skills. And having re-entered the professional world, I'm now doing much, much better financially than I ever would have been capable of doing otherwise, which empowers me later on to take the skills I now have and quit again, should I choose. Sorry, dear. The point is...
She's flop sweating now.
the point is that it's all worthwhile, is what I'm getting at.
It's oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, if you said, you don't want to get a part-time job, but you don't have much of a safety net, you should probably get a part-time job. You have to have a safety net because things aren't going to work. You're not going to make money until you do. And so if you don't have money and you don't make money, then you don't have money.
And your safety net, to be fair though, the safety net is not all customers. You cannot argue with his math. A safety net can also be people too. It might be look, I got a friend or a family member who's going to let me crash on their couch for 6 months while I try and get my thing going. I mean, safety doesn't have to be money. Money's safest. But
that's a good point. You have to be willing to live as cheaply as you can.
Cut out everything.
Chris and I gave up. You know, we used to have 2 salaries, high income, aerospace jobs, all the money we needed. And then we quit our jobs, jumped off the cliff, put it all in the business, and we were living as inexpensively as we could.
I think every one of us would have to take downsides.
It's amazing now to be like, hey, we can go on a cruise.
I would say, like, one thing that I don't think a lot of people think of is location. We mentioned about how, like, certain states have different insurance plans. Massachusetts, Mass Health. Your plan might be get rid of my car, get out of my apartment, and move to a place where that's a walking or bus or a subway city. You know, get 4 roommates. I used to wonder how certain cartoonists that seemed to have less readers than I did were making a living, and then later I meet them at a convention and find out they live with 8 other people. You know, like that might be your path, is a bunch of roommates.
Can I jump in? Obviously, all of this is easier said than done. There's no question there. And we were lucky because we had a house, a pretty big house in Maryland that we sold, and we are still living off of that money.
Part of why we needed a huge job.
We knew that we couldn't sell. We knew we couldn't move until we sold the house because we needed the money, and we're still living off of that money, and it's dwindling fast. But it's also something to be said for, like, I agree with you when you said earlier about not waiting so long. You know, you said what would you do differently or whatever. But at the same time, the fact that we are in our 40s means that we have skills and we have experience that young kids out of college may not have. And if you can find skills, even if they're not related to what you want to do, if you can find skills in your life that you can direct toward what you want to do in the new life, find them and put them on your resume, you know, or whatever, so that you can try to head down that path instead of down this slightly unrelated path, but kind of close path, you know what I mean? And the fact that you've been laid off, in a way, somebody made the decision for you. See if you can, I mean, again, easier said than done.
It's kind of like a push off the cliff.
Yeah, somebody pushed you off already, so see if you can take it in that direction. I know it's easier said than done, but see.
The only thing I would say about that question, which I think is very important, is try to work within your chosen field, even if it's on a freelance basis, while you're still doing your thing. I did a ton of freelance art, and it didn't feel as good as doing my own, but it was also, I like to say my worst day drawing was better than my best day selling websites to dentists.
Find a thing about you that's unique also, that makes you different.
Yeah.
All right, next.
Andy.
Okay, so my question.
Come way into the mic.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's a little bit away from things, but you're starting out as an artist, you're on your own, you can't afford all the things that go with it. How did you cope with the other stuff? So the website, learning your packages that you got to work with to put on the website, how do you manage it all?
For me, since immediately had to be on the internet, it was like, make a comic, put it on the internet. Oddly enough, at the dental website job, I had to learn Photoshop because it was on my resume, and I didn't. You're going to be managing people that work in Photoshop. You know Photoshop. I know every shop. Whatever. Give me all the shops. I have to learn that now? Okay, good. And so it was self-study. And so I learned, I spent most evenings that I wasn't drawing reading tutorials, watching YouTube videos. How it's easier now. You know, Tumblr makes having a website a 5-second ordeal. When I started in 2005, or 2007 actually, it was a much bigger deal. I mean, minimum quality hosting was like $55 a month. So immediately I've got another bill. I've got tutorials on how WordPress works and how you can put a comic on it and make it work, and then ads. And so it was finding people that were generous enough to put their knowledge on the internet, poring over it for hours and hours and hours. I had a bookmark file that was like, how to do stuff. And it was just 1,000 things long. How to make a website, how to set up hosting, how to redirect a URL, all that stuff. And then a whole nother category for where to print t-shirts, what's good shipping, you know, how to calculate shipping, how to ship from home, how to blah, 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 how to travel, good airline prices, like it just goes on forever. But the good news is with the internet, the knowledge is out there.
I like that the short version of your answer is Google it.
Yeah, it is. Let me Google that for you.
Let me take that a step further.
I'm an Evernote abuser. I'm not going to ask you to use one tool or another, but I would encourage you to find a tool that allows you to take information and stuff it away. Don't try to remember all of this, and don't trust the websites aren't going to magically go away.
Yeah.
So
I would email stuff to myself,
Yeah.
like copy and paste the whole article and email.
Make sure you have the actual content, and you know, just in my case, I just abuse Evernote and GTD methodology. You know, have a system is all I get.
I like to say that with my company, I make board games, and I set out to make board games. The greatest game I've ever played is running this company called Greater Than Games, because every day you're like learning new skills and getting new worker placement and doing all sorts of different things. Yeah, no, it is absolutely real-time strategy, and you have a metric of whether you're winning or losing. Is my company succeeding? Hooray! Oh, my company's not doing as well. I played the wrong pieces last turn. And it's a matter of just, you have to be in charge of your own success.
But so, listen to what he just said. He now runs business. He also is making games, but he runs a business. If what you want to do is the creative thing, and you have zero interest or knowledge or ability to run a business, you get someone to help or do something else because
you need a Kristen. All of my success, well, some of it is because I got lucky and figured out a really brilliant game. Most of my success is because of Kristen. I would still just be sitting in my office, noodling up little ideas, showing them to my friends, giving them away for free. If it weren't for Kristen, who wanted to start a business to exploit my ideas and to fill the game.
Exploit's a strong word.
I'd say, unfortunately, I cannot regret a moment of selling fucking websites to dentists, because it was at a small 10-person company, and I did learn how to file taxes, who to hire. My CPA is their CPA. Like, I learned everything I know about running a business from the small businesses that I worked at, and I did not realize how that was going to be 75% of my effort, and 25 was going to be creative.
This raises a point that derails the question. I've got to get this out, because this was the single largest point that
and we've got 5 minutes left. So
I'm going to spit it out quickly. I apologize. If you're going to quit and you know it's imminent, get your federal tax ID established as soon as possible. It is like you're birthing an entirely new human being with no credit rating at all. I was starting a tech company, and the best I could do was a secured $500 credit card. I couldn't buy a single computer on that card. You need to start building the credit for that new entity as early as possible.
Well, corporations are people.
Right. So Joel said, my CPA is their CPA. If you're starting a business and you are going to be a business owner, get a CPA. Don't do your own taxes. I don't care if you're brilliant at taxes. Get a CPA. Get a legal team or a lawyer. I don't care if you are a master of lawyerness. Don't be your own lawyer. You cannot be your own lawyer.
Get an LLC so they can't take your house.
You must have a business plan.
Which again, I would say the most important thing, if I leave you with one piece of advice, if you're a creative person wanting to start a business, partner with someone else who understands running a business.
Meanwhile, scrutinize those partners carefully or they will sink you.
We've got 4 minutes left and at least 3 or 4 people up there, so let's try and do a rapid fire.
All right, there is a swampy quagmire out there. Its name is business plan. You just mentioned it again. I've seen everyone says, oh, business plan? You got a business plan? Yeah, of course I got a business plan. It's most important to have a business plan. You fast forward to, all right, now half of these companies have failed, and people, I've heard this several times, like, oh, I thought I had a business plan. I didn't really have a business. I didn't know what I was doing. So can you please shed some light on the litmus test? What is a business plan?
A business plan is a mutable document.
For me personally, it was, these are the ways I intend to make money. If I can make X on t-shirts, X on advertising, X on travel and conventions, then I've made X number of dollars, and I want this much, so where do I come up with the rest? And it was a little notebook I had with me, and I was keeping track of everything, like paper. I wasn't even making spreadsheets that early on. And it carries on to today. Every single time I go to a convention, I enter all my sales into a spreadsheet, and then 2 years later I look back and go, this did okay at that show, this didn't do okay at that show, or I'm never going back there because nothing did okay there. But it's saying, I need this to survive, or be surviving and creatively fulfilled. What do I have to do to get to there? And I think if you can set it up in steps, like, all right, I remember having phases. Phase 1, I called mine the experiment, and I shared it with, I was very transparent about it. I shared it with my audience, and I said, phase 1 of the experiment is you read my comic and you tell all your friends about it. Phase 2 is you start buying stuff from me, and phase 3 was traveling conventions. And just by checking off, okay, that did this much this month, let's try and increase effort in that area next month, that kind of thing.
One of the most important parts of your business plan is that you will have a best case scenario, an expected, and a worst case scenario, and a plan of, okay, when we hit our worst case scenario, here's what we do. Do we dissolve the company? Do we make a new product? What do we do? Here's the expected. Okay, we're selling this many units or whatever it is your enterprise is doing, and here's what we do with it. Here's a best case scenario. Oh man, we sold everything. What do? We sold everything means we sold out a product. We have to have a plan for that. So you need to have best case, expected, and worst case, and plans at each of those points, and then every 3 months, 1 month, 2 months, depending on whatever your company is, be revisiting this.
Evaluate yourself,
and be realigning your best case, expected, worst case. Because in the life of a company, you're going to have best case months, you're going to have expected months, and you're going to have worst case months. And if you don't have a plan for each of those things, any of those things can sink you. Best case can sink you if you don't have a plan.
The takeaway from that too is be prepared to be in the business that you didn't think you were going to be in. Like, let's say my goal was ads, t-shirts, and conventions, and then I find out I'm no good at t-shirts, but for some reason ads are doing great. Let's shift some focus to that area and build that, and be prepared to change directions really quick.
Watch the Kickstarter videos.
Yeah, we got 1 minute left. Let's see how many we can get through.
Only one left.
Hey, maybe we'll finish.
Let's look at it from a different perspective now. What kind of advice would you give to the spouse of a person who is looking to do this?
Pills.
Be patient.
Pills and booze.
We love
need to have a Twitter spouses support group. Is what we need.
Spouses are the best.
Yes.
Spouses are the best.
I love mine. Mom gave me insurance.
I feel like if you could, it's hard to say. I would say maybe. My wife was amazing at this, and we've had no problems, and I don't know why. But it would be try and bite your tongue sometimes. If you're about to voice a doubt, maybe go yell it at the cat, and then come back and stroke your sad spouse's withered head because they're trying something that is exceptional. No matter what it is, even if no one's ever going to see it, even if that's not the goal, they're trying something extraordinary if they're trying to live a fulfilled life.
I think one of the, sorry.
No.
I was going to say one of the things that kept me from making the jump for so long was feeling responsible. I was making the money, most of the money, and I just felt like it was my responsibility to keep the family afloat. And I just assumed that it would be too tough for her, and I didn't really float the idea of quitting for a long time.
And talk honestly with each other.
So once we did have that conversation, things started getting in motion.
Maybe the creative person should voice the fears so the spouse can go, yeah, I was kind of thinking about that too, but they don't seem unsupported. You know?
I always felt badly because we were clearly living off of his money, always. We were always living off of his money. He got a great job with the government and it paid really well, and I was sort of floating around like I'm still floating around, and I may continue to. But anyway, so I felt badly that I couldn't support him and I couldn't say, look, I'm going to make the money, you go out and do your thing. But the fact that I wasn't also stuck in a job meant that I could say, look, and I could see him clearly, and he would come home and he'd be like, I'm so frustrated because I'm so tired of doing what they want me to do. I want to do my own thing and I don't have time. And, we would go through phases where he would just get miserable and, cranky or whatever because he didn't have time to work on his own pursuits. And I was able to say, look, we need to do this. We need to do this. And that whole part of the thing about moving to LA too, really quickly, is that the whole expression about being in the right place at the right time, the fact that we moved to LA makes us more likely to be in the right place at the right time. You can just feel it in the energy there, So if you want to do movies, go to where the movies are.
We are out of time, and I would say that's a perfect button on this. Go be around the people that are doing the thing you do.
Absolutely.
This kind of stuff changed my life. The first cruise changed my life. The first 3 conventions I did changed my life. The friends I've made. Because when they decide, it's time for me to go do something super fun and creative. Hey, Joel draws crap. Let me bring him along with me. Be around your chosen industry. Make friends in your industry. Be honest. Be kind. Don't try and ladder climb. Just try and be the best at what you do.
People want to help you.
Yeah. And we're done. Thanks for coming. Wants to come to the advanced drinking and drawing, it's tomorrow at the Solarium Pool at 11. 3 professional cartoonists will draw whatever you want as long as there's a drink in their hand.
For the rest of this cruise, I am wearing a t-shirt that is invisible, you cannot see, that says, "Tell me about your business plan."
Yeah. If you happen to be a pro programmer or you are intimately aware of GTD methodology and you're interested in working on something cool.
Am I going to get in your way if I won't be? Sure. Jason, did you get video of the JoCo karaoke? JoCo karaoke? Because I know you were singing, I wasn't sure.